Now, for most of you, the party may have not finished, but for Arne Slot and Liverpool, it's back to business. And who better to come back to business with than a game against one of Liverpool's big rivals in Chelsea. Now, Arne Slot looked like he'd enjoyed himself. He had a little bit of stubble and slightly red eyes of someone who's enjoyed the trappings of their success. But don't be fooled into thinking that he's taken his eye off the ball. As far as Arne Slot is concerned, next season starts here. Although, interestingly, he did give a little bit of a hint that maybe the team won't be the same as we saw against Spurs. He is going to give some of his fringe players more of a game in the coming games and weeks. So we'll have to wait and see exactly who gets into that. There was some news about Conor Bradley, and I asked him about Alexis McAllister. But you get to hear all about that. Let's go back to the lab. Here we are once again back in the lab, ready to go into all of the details of Arne Slot's pre-match press conference ahead of the game against Chelsea. And yes, there was a very different feel in the room as well as in what Arne Slot had to say. You could tell that obviously the mountaintop had been reached. Liverpool have won the Premier League title, and all the celebrations that came after it were very much fully enjoyed. And I think that that's fair enough for all the teams. But there was also that message of the show is not over. There are still 4 more games to come this season and plenty more things, interesting things to gain from these last 4 games. I was actually quite surprised how many people were there. It was a very full room, considering maybe people wanted to hear exactly what Arne Slot had to say in terms of how he felt about winning the league, even though he had been asked that question quite a few times over the course of the last couple of days. But as I said, there is plenty more left of this season to come. First of all, injury news. Conor Bradley should be training today, which may well put him in contention to be in the squad again against Chelsea. Although, if I was a betting man, and I'm not, I would suggest that Trent Alexander-Arnold will probably be starting at Stamford Bridge, and Bradley may well make his way onto the bench. Perhaps with a view of starting some of the other games, we'll have to wait and see. But that does take me rather nicely into the top takeaways. Top takeaway number 1, there's going to be 4 very fascinating starting 11s between now and the end of the season. Now, Slot did something that he doesn't really normally do. He admitted that there's going to be some rotation in the remaining games. Normally, you only hear this about him during the domestic cup games. But this time, he has said that there will be some players who haven't played as much as he would think that they deserved, who will get some minutes in the last games of the season. So don't expect to see the starting lineup that we saw against Spurs very many times between now and the end. Arsenal will be a very interesting one, though. I have to admit that. Now, obviously, the message for Arne Slot was very much that there are still some things that he wants to have a look at. But he kind of placed it in 2 different schools, because he was very keen to say next season starts here, and the standards that Liverpool want to set across these next 4 games will help them moving forward into next season. But obviously, next season starts here could mean a few things, because it could mean that maybe he's looking at some players in different positions, or maybe the players who are still fighting for their Liverpool futures are going to be able to come in and they're going to get some minutes. But then also he was painted as the fact that it's not so much about the future, it's also about the present, and about the fact that there's lots of players in the squad who've worked hard in training week in, week out, only to find themselves sitting on the bench, or some cases not even in the squads come match day. And those players have maybe deserved to get more minutes, and they will get some of those minutes in these 4 games here. Now, Harvey Elliott was someone who he was asked about, and he did say that he definitely falls into that category of someone who's deserved more minutes than they've got. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him earn his first Premier League start of the season at some point in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, that's ridiculous, isn't it? He hasn't started a Premier League game all season long. But it won't just be Harvey Elliott. Obviously, Federico Chiesa was mentioned. Now, there is still some confusion about whether or not he needs to play 1 more game to get a medal. No, the rule is 5 games means you automatically get a medal, but the club gets 40 medals and can request more. So the club can give him one, even if he doesn't get to that 5-game mark, although I suspect that he will. Now, it's a fascinating way to look at things, because as I mentioned, there are so many different ways you can look at the way that the team will be constructed. Is he looking at different formations? Will we see Chiesa playing in the central role? Will we see him playing as a replacement for Mo Salah on the right-hand side? Or there's also the element of, well, is he going to be around next season? Do we think he's going to be here next season? And if so, do we think that Liverpool are going to need to start replacing some of these players? So the way that it's going to be shaken up is going to be fascinating, as I mentioned. And you may find yourself in a situation where players are playing with individual ideas and ambitions in mind rather than the team ambitions. But I think you can you can forgive them that at this stage of the season, because let's face it, the team objective has been met. That is one thing that we can all say. Liverpool have done what they set out to do this season, and how they go about it between now and the end of the year will possibly determine what next season looks like to a certain extent. Top takeaway number 2, 90-point seasons aren't really that important. Now, Slot was asked about the ability of Liverpool to still win out and get to 94 points, not 96 crabbers, and he answered in a way that I haven't heard anyone really speak about before. And considering how long this debate has been going over how important it is to get to a certain points total, and what that says about how strong the champions are and how strong the league is, and this conversation that seems to be going around and around and around over the last couple of weeks and months, I've not heard anyone come at it from this angle the way that Arne Slot did. And what he said is that it's not important what the final points total ends up being. The important yardstick is what was the points total at the point the league was secured, because there's a very different intensity between trying to win games that you know you have to win the league, and then trying to win games when you know you've already won the league. I mean, hangovers aside, it is still a very different intensity. You can go out there and say that we're going to play the same way, we're going to maintain our own high standards, we are professionals, we want to lay down a marker for next season, all of those things. But it is human nature. There is going to be a difference in how you approach the game. For example, say Chelsea take a 1-0 lead. I think Liverpool are going to approach this game slightly differently than if they were still needing to win. If they needed 3 points to win the league and they went a goal down, you'd expect them to go about it slightly differently. Maybe in this situation, they would be happy to get a point, whereas previously they'd be desperate to go out there and win the league. And maybe Arne Slot would even roll the dice with some of his team selection, some of his substitutions later on in the game. Well, we're not going to see that now. So the mark at what the league is won is the most important part, because obviously not every team wins it at the same point. Some teams are fighting to the very last game of the season, whereas Liverpool got 4 games to go. Or as in 1920, they still had 7 games to go, which, to be honest, still kind of blows my mind right now. So that's really the point where you should mark it. And ergo, those 90-point seasons don't matter. I know this is something that Liverpool and Liverpool fans have been kind of caught up in over the last couple of seasons, particularly when you think about some of the great Jurgen Klopp teams and how many points they got, but they still didn't win the title. I think that point is really important because Liverpool were fighting to the end in those seasons. And in this season, they're not. So putting down the marker of the 90-point season and be able to look back in history when you get to 10, 15 years away and say, oh, well, that Liverpool team was great because they got 90 such and such points. Slot really doesn't care about that. Top takeaway number 3, Liverpool fans are a big selling point. Now, Slot was asked about the importance of winning the league early, and there are so many different ways in which you can take that conversation. But once again, Slot uses as an opportunity to talk about the things that he has been saying to prospective new signings in terms of trying to attract them to Anfield. And he mentioned the fact that one of the big things he talks about is the Liverpool crowd and playing in front of these people and the kind of support that you get and the kind of noise that they can generate when you need it. And he said that the game on Sunday was another fantastic example of this. Obviously, not just the fact that Liverpool were making noise during the game, but the celebrations afterwards, the celebrations about winning. And it's interesting to me because obviously the European nights at Anfield, the atmosphere at Anfield are well-renowned throughout world football. You'll Never Walk Alone is the same. It's well-renowned the way that Liverpool do it, and every time away fans from European teams come over, they always want to sit there and sit still and listen to that part because they want to be a part of that history. But the fans themselves are also a selling point, and we've seen how the pictures of Liverpool's trophy parades, celebrations on the pitch, and all those things have gone viral in recent years. And clearly this is the kind of things that players talk about. We've heard a lot of Liverpool players talk about how important it is for them to be able to see the joy that they're able to generate in these people. Speaking about previous trophy parade, speaking about how sad they were that they didn't get to do the trophy parade back in 1920. So these things really do matter. And I think when you are trying to lure a new signing in, yes, you can say, well, Liverpool are the Premier League champions, but you can say, well, it means that Liverpool are more likely to win more trophies. And when you do win trophies, look at that. Look at what it means to all these people. Look at what you get to enjoy. Now, obviously, the sidebar note to this is the fact that Arne Slot is very much talking to prospective new signings now already, which I think is a big green flag for a lot of people who wanted Liverpool to make business early in the transfer window and to be able to recruit from a position of strength, as I think it's called. Now, you've seen Liverpool in the past sign players very early on in transfer windows. I think about Fabinho, who was signed on the way home for the Champions League final. Think about Konate, who came in early in 2021. Think about Alexis McAllister, who came in early a couple of seasons ago. And it really does set the tone for a good transfer window, the good summer to come, because in all three of those summers, Liverpool did sign some other very influential players as well. So it's a good sign that Liverpool are trying to get their work done early. There's no guarantee, of course. We don't know exactly what kind of players they're in for, what kind of prices their selling clubs are asking for, but Liverpool are working hard to improve this team ready for next season. I think that's something that all Liverpool fans should be very, very pleased about. Now it's time for me to talk to Arne Slot, and now I had the pleasure of getting two questions this time, so I wanted to ask him something a little bit tactical about Chelsea, but also wanted to give some props to one of my favourite players from this season, and a man who I believe is still very much underrated.
Hi Arne, you mentioned that Chelsea were the best team in the first game, and they had some real joy tactically, probably giving you more tactical problems than anyone else this season. Do you enjoy these kind of tactical battles, and do you expect a similar examination on Sunday?
Yes, because Chelsea plays the same style as they played at Anfield, and they've played the same style always. Is always 3-2, 4-1, or the way you want to call it. They always bring one of their defenders into the midfield, and they did this in our game as well. That wasn't a surprise because we've seen them playing. I think it was somewhere around the 11th game, or when did we play them? Yeah. So we knew that they did this, but we didn't defend that well enough, or they were just outstanding. That's also a possibility. I do feel that was one of their better games during the season. But yeah, apart from tactics, they have so many good players in their squad that is the biggest thing you have to fight against, not the tactics. It's always the players you have to play against.
Speaking of the players, Alexis McAllister has been nominated for Premier League Player of the Month. I think he's probably been a little bit underrated over the course of the season. He's not someone who's been spoken about as much as some of the other players. How important do you think he is to the success you've been able to get this season?
Yeah, I don't think he's underrated by me, because he played maybe every game or close to every game. Maybe the few times he didn't play, that was because he either needed rest or he got a knock, so he couldn't play. Very important player, game intelligence, so comfortable on the ball. But what makes him even more special to me is normally players that have so much game insight and are so comfortable on the ball are not as aggressive and intense without the ball, and he is one of the few players in the world that combine this. So great game intelligence, great on the ball, but a tenacity, that's the word you use here. Without the ball, that is in our midfield he stands out in terms of tenacity.
Now, there were a couple of things that jumped out at me from the way that Arne answered both these parts of the question. I'll start with the first part, the tactical element. And it's interesting because Arne Slot has been very, very keen to give Chelsea plenty of praise for the way they performed in that first game, the way that they were so good tactically. He said once again today that they were the better team in that game, and that he's very surprised by how big the points gap ended up being between Liverpool and Chelsea. He also said, though, that was probably the best game, or one of the best games they've played all season. So maybe within that he's saying, well, they couldn't keep that level, and that's why the points total is as wide as it is. One of the things he also mentioned is that it wasn't so much about how great that Chelsea played. It was more the fact that Liverpool maybe didn't play them as well as they could have done, which tells me that there may not necessarily be any drastic changes to the way Liverpool face them. Another thing he mentioned is the fact that there wasn't a surprise, the things that Chelsea did tactically. Even so, one of the things that I noticed about the game is Chelsea kind of moved to a three at the back, and they used Malo Gusto as someone, a way of getting around Liverpool's press. So they had him high and wide. So there was always a pass out for the centre halves. So when Liverpool were pressing in their 4-2-4, there was always a spare man. When Liverpool kind of tried to funnel over to be able to kind of prevent that, there was a spare man in the middle. And if you want to go back and watch that game, you'll see plenty of opportunities that Chelsea had to drive through the middle of Liverpool's pitch. And that's the kind of thing that you'd expect them to not want to be able to do again. But as I say, this is less to do with the way that Chelsea had their tactics and more to do with the way that Liverpool responded to those tactics. So I expect to see Liverpool go out there and say, do the same again, just better. Which, I'll be interested to see exactly if that works or if it doesn't work. Now, one of the things Liverpool did do in the second half, which I believe worked, was that they had Curtis Jones man marking Cole Palmer. I'm not sure whether or not they'll do that again, simply because Cole Palmer's not quite as influential these days as he was at that stage in the season. But again, this feeds back into the lineup question and who will be playing and who won't be playing. If Curtis Jones is in the starting lineup, which I wouldn't be surprised if he was, he may end up having to follow Cole Palmer around. Although, who's to say, this time he might have a slightly easier job of it. Now, the second part of my question was about Alexis McAllister, and I loved the way that Arne Slot answered this because he valued the same thing that I valued. Now, he was keen to mention the fact that he's obviously a great creative player, a great technical player, but the thing that marks him out is his aggression and his tenacity in terms of winning the ball when Liverpool don't have the ball. So either winning it back or pressing. And again, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that he's not the quickest, he's not the biggest, and yet he's very much able to hold his own in that midfield. The way sometimes we saw last season when he was playing as the deepest line midfielder, there were times when he could get exposed and he was having to chase back players, and he got a rash of yellow cards when players had got past him and he was having to pull them down. We haven't seen that so much this season. The tactical tweaks that has Ryan Gravenberch standing behind him really seems to have helped him and kind of released him to be at his devastating best, picking and choosing the moments to go out and hunt after the ball. And I've been really impressed with the way that he's been able to play, because if you think about it, he has that tempo setting, passing ability that you get from a deep lying playmaker, a number 6, but he also has the creative abilities of a number 10. It's essentially like you've got a 6 and a 10 in the same person, but he's playing as an 8, which gives you so much tactical flexibility. Now, one thing I want to pick up on, I've seen quite a few people say, well, his passing numbers aren't as high as they were last season. So maybe that means he's actually not as good as he was last season. Maybe he's not as influential as he was last season. But I do think there's quite a few reasons for that. The fact that he's no longer the deepest line midfielder means that he's not the one getting the ball from the centre backs. He's not the one getting the ball from the goalkeeper, as he often was when he was playing as a number 6. So even if in that situation he was just getting the ball and passing it short to Virgil or passing it short to Trent for them to go out and play the killer passes, his numbers aren't going to be as high because there's going to be a few more people in front of him who are going to be doing that job. I also think that the influence of Virgil in the build-up has changed. He's become more influential, and that's going to make a difference as well. Whereas previously, you say Virgil's only going to be passing it left to right, or he's going to be doing his diagonal long bombs to Mo Salah. Now, he seems to be playing a lot more passes through the lines into the midfielders than he was previously. Once again, something that McAllister was in charge of doing when he was playing as a 6 last season. But this is where it comes really interesting. Yes, his passes per match has gone from 58 to 42 this season, but his last season he got 5 assists from 3 big chances created. This season it is 4 assists from 5 big chances created. Now, obviously, the thing with assist numbers is it depends upon the people who you're passing to putting the ball in the net. And there are some people who he would be passing to, some of the forwards, who, let's say, haven't been quite as deadly this season as they were last season. I'm not going to name names, but I think I don't have to. But the big chances created, that's the most important point. He is creating these chances. Now, obviously, he does take some set pieces, so that's going to take some things into account. But the point is that his level of creation hasn't dropped, considering where he was last season. Even though he's seeing a lot less of the ball, he is still as influential in the attack as he was previously, while still being able to do all of the defensive dirty work. Honestly, for me, he's one of the first names on the team sheet. Arne Slot mentioned the fact that he's not underrated as far as he's concerned. He's played him every time he can. The interesting thing, though, is will he have to try and find someone else who can play to keep him sharp, keep him fit and at his best? Because there have been times this season where it's looked like he has started to struggle a little bit physically late on in games, some games that maybe he probably should have not been starting, maybe come off the bench to keep him a bit fresher. We have to understand as well that he's a very key man for Argentina, so he's going to be playing lots of games for his country as well. But these are all going to be next year's problems. We'll have to wait and see whether Liverpool look to do something in the transfer market or whether the likes of Stefan Bajcetic coming back in will be able to give him a little bit of a break. But for now, McAllister, I tip my hat to you. And that's all we have time for this week. Thank you once again for joining me on another edition of the Press Conference Review. You will find me on the Late Challenge podcast. If you haven't seen last week's, I suggest you go out and watch last week's. It was quite the party. I've been all over the Anfield Wrap as well. I've been making some appearances on Premier League Productions, some appearances on TalkSport. Also, there'll be a new column for This is Anfield out later this next week. And of course, I have my stuff on Substack. So I will be bringing this back as a podcast. Again, I know that I have missed the last couple of weeks press conference reviews being turned into podcasts. Put my teeth back in. But now I have a computer once again. Praise Jesus, I have a computer once again, which means I will be able to do the requisite editing to be able to turn this into a podcast. So fear not, you'll be able to hear me as much as you'll be able to see me. But for now, we look forward to seeing exactly who's going to start for Liverpool against Chelsea. We'll see you soon.